Today's topic is moving windows. These are specialized metrics used in MicroStrategy or other BI tools to capture data over multiple days or multiple attributes. For example, the moving sum or a moving average. These tend to be a little bit tricky, especially when they're compounded or when they're utilized with ranking systems or with other metrics, or they're built in other metrics. So let me show you an example. Let's say we want to look into something like the revenue on a daily basis for a certain region, for instance. Let's just build a simple report. And we're going to add a metric from the sales, just basic revenue. Probably need a filter to make more sense out of our data. Let's get a time filter somewhere. Actually, I built these filters. This is a date filter. It's simply prompted asking the user to enter a start and end date. So it's simply an ID with two different entries or two different prompts. All right. Let me actually show you how the two prompts look like, just in case you were curious. You could watch our prompts video, but if you weren't sure, you could just create a value prompt, make it required, and then the two value prompts using the ID between, and you just drag and drop the two different prompts in that you need, the start one and the end date in this case. All right, let's go back. And now that we're ready, we can save our report and probably run it as well. We'll just give it a quick name. I'll call it Moving Windows. We're going to use one metric, the moving sum, to show this, but this will apply for multiple moving or Windows type of applications. So I'm just going to enter two dates, and you will see the dates return, all 15 of them, during the period that I selected. All right, so now let's add some more complexity to this. Let's just use derived metrics for simplicity, and now we're going to insert the windows. These are OLAP functions. Just going to choose one of the moving ones. For simplicity or for better logic, probably use the moving sum, but you have a lot of these to choose from. They all use similar or the same concept, and they all can be applied in the same way we're going to apply them in this demo. So let's just go with one of these that requires a value list and a window size. So this is going to allow us to add multiple rows of data. So I'm going to type it in. I prefer typing in rather than using the wizard, but I need the syntax. So it's moving sum revenue, and I'm just going to add 2 days of revenue or 2 rows of revenue. It's important that you specify the parameters. Without specifying the parameters, you will not get the right results. So I just want to make sure that we break by the regions, because we do not want to lump the regions into our computation when we're displaying one region at a time. We want to see the sum for one region at a time by the day. You need to sort by the display. This is again critical, because if you're viewing the data by certain attribute, you want to make sure that you're moving in the same order that the attribute is moving. So in the case days are moving ascendingly, we're going to sum ascendingly. So this follows your logic or the way you are designing your report. Okay, so I'm ready, validate, and I can name it there or I can rename it here. Let's just give it a simple name that makes sense. right, moving sum of revenue. Just give it 2 days because we specified the 2 days. All right, just reorder it, move it to the right. All right, so let's test this again. So now we see each column adding the 2 days ahead of it. The first row is not going to include any previous data, so we got 5,000, but the second row to 11,000, and you follow. Each 2 rows are summed up on the right, etc., all the way to the end. But again, we still have that issue, if you notice, on the first day that the moving sum cannot look forward because that information does not exist. So basically that value right there for moving sum, the 2-day moving sum, is actually incorrect or misleading at best. Because as you noticed in our filter, we are limited by those dates that are entered in the prompt. And thus, if something does not get pulled in by the SQL, there's no way for MicroStrategy to be able to compute a metric by looking forward or looking backwards into outside the scope of the SQL. So obviously this is something that you need to resolve. So let's see what ways of resolving it. Let's see one way of, or using filters to try to resolve this and how that doesn't work, and then showing you the appropriate way. All right, so I'm going to go to design mode again. Let's say somebody might say, well, what if I just trim that day, right? Let's give that a shot and see how that works. I've created that filter. And what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to filter by the number of days that are between start date and date, but I'm going to subtract or remove 2 of them. So I'm going to go to the start date, move 2 days up, and go to the end date. So let me show you what that means. And I'm going to embed that in a filter. It's the ID between those 2 prompts. Notice here I'm no more using a simple prompt. I actually customized it. And you could use something like an editor or Word. Let's just use something simple like Word. I'm going to paste that formula. It's apply simple, the first prompt plus 2, which is start date. Okay, so plus 2 when you're talking about time is increasing the time or bringing the date closer. So what I'm trying to do is trim the first or the beginning dates in this case. And because we used the window of 2, I'm just using 2. You could have used 1, whichever logic makes sense to you. But at least you need to trim the bad data, or that's at least what we're trying to do at this point. Once I get this in, you can paste that formula into the custom component of the prompt or the filter. And now let's go revisit our report, and with our new filter. All right, so now we got rid of those rows that were producing bad data, but guess what? Now the next set of rows is producing the wrong set of data. So that's the thing, like, you just by trimming days, you're still coming back to the same problem, because all you did was remove days, but you were not able to produce the right subset or the right data set that allows the moving sum or the window operation to operate. So you need to we need a clever operation to do this, or something to get around this. So what I'm going to do is use that report, which has the valid days, which are the days that we removed 2 days from using that valid date filter, and I'm produce a report just by the days. Straightforward. I'm going to use this report as a filter to filter a metric. And look at this metric. This is a simple metric. It's trying to produce some logic. It's max of 1, which is always true, right? Where the level, and I specify the level at day being standard, and region I'm ignoring it. You could keep region as standard as well, depending on your business needs. But one thing you want to make sure is that you merge it into new, and you remove related report filters. Again, these might, depending on your needs, you might have to set them differently. But for something like this that we're trying to produce, this will work. All right, so once the filter is ready, or the metric is ready, we want to use it and see how we can take advantage of it. One way you can take advantage of it is by this trick, or by this one methodology. Here I'm using some logic. I'm saying if that metric is valid, equals 1, then you do a moving sum, similar to the one we derived inside the report, which breaks by region and sorts by date for revenue and 2 days window. But then if it's not valid, we want to go and produce a null. How does that happen? One way to do it is say 0 to null of 0. Basically, convert a 0 to a null if the value is 0. So basically, I'm just here, what I'm doing is just a smart way of producing the null value without writing in a null. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to maintain some of the aggregation properties. And again, you just make sure the MovingSum parameters are set up and the function is correct, and you can validate it to make sure that this is correct. Once you're done setting it up, we can use it. Okay, again, 0 to null is just to produce a null when the case is 0. So what I'm going to be tracking now is my valid values. So we're going to have two sets of information. We're going to have dates, and then we're going to have valid dates, and that's what matters. And make sure this metric is an outer, because we're going to use outer joins to make this operation work. All right, so now the next step is going back to our report, adding the valids. I'm going to add both of them for display. Later on, if you're using a report like this, you don't want to display everything, but this is just for illustration purposes. And let's rank these just to give it a little bit more flavor. Let's rank it and break it by region. Ranking will also help us see what's the changes that are happening. Let's produce the results. Okay, because we have these two, I need them to do some outer joining. So let's actually go and manipulate this. This is actually critical. These settings are not one size fits all. Again, it depends on what else you have on the report. This may or may not work for you. It might ruin some other results, but we're going to support an outer join. I like to use the join 92 just because simplicity of the SQL, so I can interpret or debug. But here I'm going to nest aggregations. Remember, we're doing aggregations. We're not doing straightforward facts. So I do not want to, I want to perform an outer join, which is why I select the third option. And look at this. This is starting to produce some results that we're looking for. Notice those two that I trimmed out are now being nullified for the valid. Okay. Now the revenue is being summed, but what I don't want to see necessarily is those two first values, because they contain that first date which has an incorrect moving sum. So I'm going to take advantage of this setting now. Again, I could have used a trimmed 1 instead of 2 for my purpose. And what I'm going to do now is add the valid is not null to my view filter. And now look at this. Now I'm producing the right results, revenues, etc. So now you're looking at this and we're thinking, okay, everything is matching. So let's look at the totals and see where our new solution is actually the correct solution versus the derived solution. Notice that this is for one region in this case, but now that we go and roll up, look at our results. They dynamically, the moving sum is capable of capturing across totals, and the derived metric is still trying to calculate on the view, so it produces a problem. So now we were able to do this outer join that lets us trim nulls out of the invalid or out of scope dates that would produce the invalid moving or moving sum. And you can rank, and the ranking is you can build the inside derived or external. I recommend using external to build those. Remember to use outer joins. Hopefully this video has taught you how to build these moving metrics, specialized metrics, and how to trim undesired data. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.